taken on the GitHub, and then I believe he added myself and a few others as admins, so we can start building the GitHub into a crypto redundant, where there's a few of us that have admin that we can protect it. That, of course, no code can be changed without multi-approvers. But at the same time, we want developers to be able to do comments and commits and make changes, and then it not be one centralized person that controls that GitHub. So if something happens to them, the whole GitHub kind of goes to crap. So he is in the process of that. And I think we can certainly give some tokens out of that technical aspect for that. And then I think really we need to probably, I would say, reach out to someone in the community that wants to start working on the documentation for the coordinator. And again, we had those 6 people that were technical in nature that are willing to help out. Bill Poster, I think we have that list somewhere, and maybe we can put a post up to say, hey, does anyone want to work on documentation for some token incentives? And that can come out of the, that pot that we were talking about of the technical category. So let me write that down. Thank you, sir. So meeting takeaway. Okay, let's see. Reach out to community. Technical experience persons to start on coordinator. Okay. Did we have anyone? I think we had like 1 or 2 people reach out that could run a coordinator. Lion Alpha, since you have experience with Shimmer, I mean, and you're doing research, is that something maybe you would be open to run a coordinator node?
Truth be told, I actually researched the interaction with Shimmer and not the DLT self-flag internally. So I don't think that I'm suitable for something like that, to be honest.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, maybe we put out a post too on who'd be open to run coordinator node. Saphir, I think at this point with incentives now, we can maybe reach out to DLT Green. What do you think about that? Or anyone else? And then
yeah, we can definitely do that.
Perfect. And then second. Another person was interested, but more as running it for private purposes. Okay. At this point, we need to reach our 5. So even if they could run a coordinator node for a short-term period, at least to get it launched, that might be enough. So there's that aspect. We could also reach out to Sooniverse, like maybe if they were able to port over their code for an incentives and could run a coordinator at the same time. That would be kind of nice. So yeah, I think the coordinator documentation and who would run a coordinator node would probably be the biggest thing there. We could also check with Tangle Pay. Okay. That's going to be the biggest hurdle to get over, is to get those lined up to be able to do the airdrop. Okay, just waiting on Bill Poster. Perhaps Epic Zero would be better choice. Yeah, if you can reach out to them, please do. Because they're still active, aren't they? Kind of. Zero. Okay. Yeah-ish, but after the rebase, they've been a bit quiet. I don't think they wanted to port it there. Got it. Yeah, it'd be great to have them. And I mean, they're the NFT platform. They've got, were they doing any DeFi? But they did take over, oh shoot, what was the DeFi platform? Didn't they take it over? Um, yeah, Tangle Swap, exactly. I mean, that's going to be an EVM aspect, but still. Um, okay, I don't think anything happened there, right? Okay, just wait for Lion Alpha. Mark my words, people with practical projects research will start reacting about Rebase has already started. You mean reacting in the sense of like it's not suiting a feeless? Yeah, exactly. Yep. Hey, man. I think I agree as well. Time will tell. Okay. Try to find a recent paper. Okay, thank you. Um, so yeah, I think that's really the biggest. I mean, incentive wise and the vision, right? We talked about the vision last meeting, and in the vision channel, that's why I started looking at that and saw that, back in November when there was initial discussion of launching this TAN network, that there was potentially a move to a delegated proof of stake um, validation system instead of a coordinator system. Um, and that, this solves some problems of node incentivization, congestion control, spam protection, etc. And I think that's great. I mean, I would support that. I just wonder how much technical um, coding is involved with that. Um, and I just want to make sure we don't fall down that rabbit hole of we're chasing something that's now we're changing the protocol, right? Like we can fork Shimmer. Shimmer has distributed coordinators rather than a single coordinator, so it's not centralized. It's a matter of, I think understanding how many coordinators can we have, and I think great. It would be great to move to a delegated proof of stake system at some point, as long as we're not one altering that feeless nature, and two, not all of a sudden, oh, everything's got to stop for the next 2 years while we rewrite the consensus. Saphir, do you remember? I mean, was there any discussion of how involved kind of creating a delegated proof of stake, maintaining the feeless, technical wise that would involve?
When we're spinning up the network, there were some initial talks on the idea with folks who were interested. I would have to double check with them how involved that would be. My understanding was that it was a relatively low lift, but agreed 100%. If it's not, we don't want to go down that rabbit hole without it being a set priority.
Right. And Bill Prost is saying what other networks use DPoS, delegated proof of stake. I think some DAGs do. Off the top of my head, I can't say, but I'm pretty sure they do. But again, I think, we would really need to pin down on how much that would cost, how much time, how much effort. I think in the meantime, um, we focus on not just that, but the articulation of its distributed coordinators. It's not a coordinator. It's not a centralized coordinator. And even if we could come up with a new name, um, you know, uh, for that coordinator to be more distributed, because we could have ultimately, I think, again, I'm not a tech guy, but 10, 15, 20. And it doesn't affect necessarily the speed and the scalability of the network. Now, saying that, I think one of the struggles that IOTA always had was, since they did essentially initially, the community essentially funded it, there was no war chest to give incentives to anyone, whether that be proof of stake validators or coordinators or distributed coordinators, etc. We, on the other hand, have this 80%. So it doesn't necessarily mean that of these, let's say, technical tokens or that 40, 30, 20, 10 has to necessarily be specifically for, hey, we're giving you this incentives to create this or build this or complete this project task. We could use those incentives to give to people that run coordinators, or if eventually we get to a delegated proof of stake aspect, which actually was, if we all remember, the very original vision of Shimmer was that it was going to be a proof of stake and that the community would vote on the yearly inflation. I don't know if you guys remember that, but back in, whatever it was, October 2022, when they kind of proposed this vision, it was going to be fully run by the community and going to be governed by the community. There was going to be inflation, and it was going to be a delegated proof of stake system. That's how it was going to be secured, the network. And I think, that was, I wish they would have at least given that a chance, but of course they didn't really give any control to the community. Now, I'm not saying go with inflation, but two things. One, I think it could go from the 80%. And again, if we build this and it actually takes off when we get to year 2, 3, and 4, then the community with a solid governance structure that by that time could say, hey, let's do a DPoS system, let's do inflation to reward those, or let's just use the tokens we have, etc. Another aspect is, and if one of you guys can remind me, so there was the 80%, there was going to be 10% for IOTA Shimmer holders, and then 10% for the Tangle Pay team to launch and get some liquidity going and then cover the network launch. The 10% just didn't get sold, so there's like 9% plus left over out of that 10%. Is that correct? Am I on the right following of all that, Saphir?
Yeah, that's correct. The initial launch, 10%.
Okay.
Only one.
And then
even 1%, I think, is generous.
Yeah. And then Garrett was stating, of that 9% left over that wasn't sold in sort of the launch, that could be burned, or it could be put up for sale again, or we can use that 9% and take a percentage of that and give it to people that want to run validators. Just curious people's thoughts there. Saphir says, I like it. Bill Poster. Because, at the end of the day, I think if we look at networks that have done well and networks that have done not so well, the networks that do well, at the end of the day, humans are economic in nature, and if they're going to spend time, energy, and funds, they want to be rewarded for something. If someone's going to run a validator, if someone's going to be run conduct a delegated proof of stake, and they're going to run a node, they want to get a reward. IOTA always had this issue where, they didn't have rewards to pay validators and node own runners, people that ran nodes, and it could never get the network off the ground to the point where if someone was running a node or being a validator, their business, right, whatever DApp they made enough to offset the cost and energy of running that. So it's kind of the chicken and the egg in this aspect. Like, we got to get the network off the ground. To get the network off the ground, you need people to be running validators and putting time and effort in. To do that, if it's very difficult to do that without giving them rewards. So it's a good pool size for validators that should last quite a long time, especially as the network grows, correct? Bill Poster, yeah, we should hold on to it for now and decide later. So we could always, out of this technical category, 45% of the 40% in year